The Gazelle Maxinet, a small bicycle made for little people that I fixed up last year, is back inside the barn for some maintenance. After more than 2600 kilometers, it got a flat tire, and that's something that needs to be fixed. Unfortunately, it also needs new tires. And since I need to take out the rear wheel, I'm also going to replace the chain and have a look inside the hub, because it was leaking some rusty oil at some point. When I recommissioned this bicycle last year, I squirted in some oil through the indicator pin opening, and some of that oil came out rather brown. Also, at some point this hub was in between gears, and the date stamp on this hub here is from 92, and I thought 92 or 91. Somewhere in the early 90s they changed to a newer type of Sturmey Arch 3-speed. So I'm curious what I will find in here. As you can see from this old footage, the chain on this bicycle is well worn, and since this bicycle does get a lot of use, it is time to replace the chain. But check out the amount of dirt that got built up inside the chain case. It's probably because I had to enlarge this opening in order to make it fit. Got it! Wonderful sparkly action. Now let's see if I can remove the wheel. There it is. So I moved this shit show to the vise, and since I'm going to open up this hub, I should also clean the drum brake. Sounds nice. I wonder how much brake dust I'm going to find inside this drum brake. How does this work? I probably need some special tool that I don't have. There it is. Damn gravity. Some brake dust, but not too bad. Well, I'll clean this off later. First I will remove the cone, and then I need to flip the wheel. The cork doesn't look too bad, but maybe I got a replacement. I could also maybe dish it to the outside. One spacer and another spacer on the inside, and a dust cover. I think it moved. Huh. It's already loose. That was a piece of cake. And now we get to find out how rusty this thing is on the inside. Oh, it actually looks rather good. It's also the newer model. The model without well, not the no in between model, no in between gears, and that explains why when I needed to adjust the cable at some point I was between the gears. it looks a lot better than I expected. But I'll clean this and put it back together. Well, that looks clean enough for me, but I'm going to put some fresh grease on the bearings, and later I will squirt some oil on the rest of the hub or the internals. It's kind of strange, or I find it surprising that a hub shell dated from 1992 is still using this older model of Sturmey Archer. I wasn't expecting that. Maybe at some point the internals got replaced with older internals. So, after almost emptying a can of brake cleaner, it's time to slap this thing back together with some gearbox oil. But I've already made a video about reassembling one of these, so I'm not going to film all of this. So both of the cones are still usable, and I think I will also reuse these balls. Nothing wrong with them, they just need some fresh grease, and then I will slap it all back together. I'm not sure if you can see this, but there's minor pitting on this bearing race inside the driver, but I don't have a replacement, so I'm just going to reuse it. Also, there was some rust inside the ball race, but I'll clean this and reassemble everything. A little bit of green grease for on the ball ring bearings. Shouldn't hurt. Damn! And one of the balls fell out. Alright, I'm gonna go for a hunt now. Well, I searched, but that little spring is permanently lost in all of the mess here. This wheel I rebuilt last year, and for a while I used it in my Gazelle Solide. I'm not going to use the internals. I'm just going to borrow the little springs. As you can see, I probably used too much oil when I reassembled this hub, because some of that oil came out and now all of the spokes are rather greasy. Yeah, this is a bit of a setback, because now this is going to take a lot longer than I expected. I just swapped out the balls and springs from that other Sturmey Archer hub, and now it's time to reassemble this thing. excuse. Alright, next I need to install the bearing on the other side. Installed with some nice fresh green grease. Now let's move on to the rest of this shit show. With the hub re-greased and reassembled, it's time to replace this worn out tire. As you can see, this tire is pretty well used, and it's kinda amazing, I hate that word, that it only got one flat tire in 2600 kilometers. Got it. The Gazelle Machinette uses a not so common size of rim, 640, and I think that is ETTRO or something like that. I could only choose between three types of tire on the website where I placed my order, and I chose these CST tires. It's the only brand that I recognized. I use these on my Union bicycle, and they are good enough for me. They are 37 millimeters wide. That should be enough. I'm counting 4 patches on this inner tube. That's 1, 2, 3, a patch over a patch. I don't like that. And that's 4. I kinda wish I had ordered a new inner tube, but I will find the leak and patch it again. 1 tire installed. Looks a bit thin, but hey, it's not a fat bike. And there wasn't any direction mark on the tire, so I guess it doesn't matter. And in the end I did have to replace the inner tube, because the old one was leaking next to an old patch, and yeah, I don't like patching over a patch. Alright, time to take this shit show back to the bicycle and reassemble everything. I bought a new chain from the local bike guy, and apparently this has some kind of coating to prevent rust buster. It's also a bit more expensive than a regular chain. To be honest, it kinda looks cheap, like it has been sprayed with a silver rattle can. But let's install this thing. As you can see, I had to take off the whole chain case in order to get the chain through the plastic part. But unfortunately, now I'm having trouble mounting the chain case again. For some reason, I don't understand, I cannot get this hole in the plastic chain case to line up with the hole in the bracket. And as far as I can tell, the bracket is not really adjustable. Man, things like this can really drive me mad. Well, for now I will leave this and offer up the wheel, and later I'll have a look at the chain case again. Originally the sprocket was dished towards the inside. Because there is some wear, I flipped it. Hopefully I'm not going to regret that decision, but I don't have a spare 18 tooth sprocket laying around. Here's the wheel again. Now the struggle can begin. I think the chain tensioners are supposed to sit on the inside of the frame, like this. So I made a stupid mistake. I kept the chain too long. I had to shorten it twice. But as a result of the axle being too far to the back of the bicycle, the chain tensioner was butted up against the washer here, and that kinda cracked the plastic chain tensioner. It's still usable, but yeah, I did break it. Apparently the rear bracket for the chain case is adjustable, but these notches here on the side, they are in the way of the mudguard. I cannot really close the two halves of the mudguard together, so I'm going to grind these away. You know what? I should just have hit them with the hammer. That would be a lot quicker. Hindsight, I guess. It's a bitch. Finally, I got it. I almost forgot this little detail. Yeah, now it is seated properly. I'm not sure what I should think about this chain. There's no grease on here and it's very clean to work with. But yeah, grease is great rust prevention. I guess I will put some grease or oil on here. Extra rust prevention is always a good thing. Okay. Let's close her up. Yep. Next problem. The plastic here is hitting the axle, so I need to grind off a little bit more. Here we go. Attempt number 2. Well, it fits. And of course something is rubbing. Man, chain cases are the worst. As you can see, all of the plastic bits are off again because something kept rubbing the chain case. And I think I found the problem. The head of this little bolt here that holds the carrier on the back here, the head was rubbing against the chain case. When I pulled the chain case to the outside, the rubbing noise went away, but as soon as I let it go, it started rubbing again. So I removed the plastic parts and I did grind a little plastic away. Hopefully that problem will be fixed now. I just noticed that these notches that I ground away were supposed to line up with these holes in the chain case. Yeah, I didn't know that. It's an amateur mistake. I also had to enlarge this hole. I'm hoping that will help me line up everything. So the chain case is back on, and the result sounds very acceptable. Hopefully this will stay this way. This was a lot of extra work that all came from flipping that rear cog. I should have just bought a new cog. But yeah, hey, I'm Dutch, I'm cheap. Shit like this will happen. Next I need to hook up the rear brake. And install the indicator pin, and I'm pretty much done. I still need to replace the front tire, but that should be a lot easier than the rear wheel. It's not the biggest challenge I'm facing in this project, although this cable is in my way. It's preventing me from taking out the whole wheel, but I'll get this done. And last but not least, the brake cable. I hate this little red piece. I always lose it. Compared to the rear brake, this front setup is terrible. Damn gravity. I'll adjust the front brake later. Last thing I need to do is squirt in some air. Of course. Well, I got more valves. Let's try this again. Fuck. What's wrong here? I don't get it. Well, let's ignore this, because I'm tired and I want to go to bed. Anyway, that's it for me. Like, subscribe, yada yada yada, and to be continued.